Hey everybody, welcome to the guided assignment for chapter 17. It's going to be super fresh. Actually, it probably won't. It'll just be an assignment, but hopefully it will help you to get through the rest of the homework for chapter 17, which is the real intent, right? Easy A on the guided assignment, just follow along with the teacher, and then easier work through the rest of the chapter. So that's really what we're after. So there's a ton of information here. And so I'm just going to walk you through how to do this problem. And so we'll just start at the top. Dover Chemical Company. They make specialty chemicals by a series of 3 processes, all materials being introduced in the distilling department. From the distilling department, the materials pass through the reaction and filling departments, emerging as finished chemicals. So the balance of the work in process for the filling department is right here. That's at January 1st. So that's what the balances were at the start of the period. And then here's the costs that were charged to the filling department during the month of January. And then gives us a little other information here, and then tells us to prepare a cost of production report for the filling department for January. So let's see. Let's get started. So the first thing up there is our units charged to production. So what we're doing, I think one thing that's important as you get started is to recognize this top section is in units, okay? And then the bottom section is cost. So this is going to be in whatever their units are. It just says units. It doesn't say if it's gallons or whatever, but it's the units. And then this will be in dollars down here, okay? So our inventory in process on January 1st, we can see right here is 3,400 units. So that's what we'll start with. And then our inventory that we received from the reaction department is, let's see, should be right up here, 52,300 units received, transferred in from reaction. All that means is they finished their work on them in the previous department, in the reaction department, and then sent them on to this department, which is the filling department. So then our total units to be accounted for by the filling department will just be what we had, 3,400, plus what we received from the reaction department, which should come out to 55,700. There's our first little section. Not too bad there. All right, so the next is we have to figure out the equivalent units. And that's a little bit more confusing. I'll try to talk through the process. So again, our inventory in process at the beginning of the period in whole units was 3,400 units. And then it wants our equivalent units. And so we have to recognize that as of January 1st, these ones that had been transferred into us, they were already done. It says all of the direct materials are put into them in the reaction, or I forget which department. Oh, distilling department. So the 3,400 units that are sitting there in inventory, they've already had all of the direct materials put into them. So we're going to say that this has equivalent units of 0 direct materials, meaning there's no direct materials because we don't put the direct materials in this department, the filling department, that's already done. And then the conversion costs, that's any labor we have to put into them and any overhead we're going to apply. So up here, it tells us that the conversion is 60% done for these units that are there. So the remaining amount of work we have to put into them is 40% of that. So 40% of the whole number of units, the 3,400 times 40%, gives us 1,360 units. So again, this is a little confusing, but we have these 3,400 units sitting there, but they're 100% done as it relates to direct materials, meaning we'll have to put in during this month 0 direct materials for these units. And then the conversion costs, they're 60% done, meaning we'll need to put in 40%. So we're going to come up with our equivalent units, which are 0% of 3,400 for the direct materials and 40% of 3,400 for the conversion. Then we have the units that were started and completed during the month. And so let's see, we know that that was given to us right up here. Kind of it was given to us, okay? This is a little confusing, but again, let's see. If we had 52,300 units, that were transferred in from reaction. And then we can see here that we completed 53,000 units. If we take $53,000 units, so that's the total amount that we completed, and we subtract the number that were already in process at the beginning of the month, that will tell us how many we started and finished during the month. So I took 53,000, the total units completed, minus 3,400, the number of units that were in process at the beginning of the month. So we're going to say we completed 49,600 units during the month. And since we had to do all of the materials and all of the conversion, we'll say the equivalent units are also 49,600 for each. So to get transferred to finished goods in January, we're just going to add these up. So our whole units will be 53,000, which matches right here where it tells us that we, during January, 53,000 units were completed. 49,600 direct materials, that's just 0 plus 49,600. And 50,960, which is 1,360 plus 49,600 conversion. All right, so this is a little bit confusing, okay? And the whole idea of equivalent units is a little bit confusing. And so I just want to kind of try to explain this. Recognize that this is just a mathematical estimate, okay, as to the equivalent number of complete units we have, and we're only going to use this so that we can calculate costs. So for example, we know that there were 53,000 units, but since these 3,400 already had their direct materials done when we started, we only had to do or start and complete 49,600 units of direct materials, okay? And then the conversion costs, the labor and overhead we're putting in, we figured that there was 1,360 equivalent units. There were actually 3,400 units, but they were 60% done. So we still had to do or put into them 40% of that labor and overhead. And so these numbers make it look like, well, there was only 49,600 direct materials units and 50,960 conversion on units. But really, there was 53,000 units. We just only had to do or add to it the direct materials for 49,600 because 3,400 units worth of materials had already been applied at the beginning. And the same concept here. So I don't know if that makes it clearer. If you're still struggling with the concept of equivalent units, you might want to read through this section in the book because it's a little abstract and a little bit weird. All right. So on this slide, we're going to look at our inventory in process at the end of the month. And we can look right here, and it tells us that the work in process in the filling department on January 31st was 2,700 units, 30% completed. We're going to say 2,700 whole units. We know that these units already have their direct materials applied. So we're going to say there's 2,700 worth of direct materials. And then 30% are completed with respect to the conversion costs. So we'll take 2,700 times 30%, and that gives us 810 equivalent units in process at the end of the period. So again, we will just add these up, 53,000 plus 2,700, which is 55,700. 49,600 plus 2,700, which is 52,300. And 50,960 plus 810, which is 51,770. So that gives us the equivalent units for the month of January. Okay. Up here, we figured out how many overall units there'd be, 55,700. We can see that our whole units adds up to 55,700. And that we had to apply during the month 52,300 units worth of direct materials and 51,770 units worth of conversion costs. So this is going to play into the next section. So I'm going to check my work and make sure I didn't make any mistakes. So I'm good. So that lets me now, because I'm going to use some of this information down in the cost information, because what we have to do is calculate the cost per equivalent unit. All right, so the total cost for January in the filling department, if we scroll up here, it's actually given to us right here. So the direct materials cost was $496,850. And the conversion costs right here, $101,560 for direct labor and $95,166 for factory overhead. So if we add those two together, we get $196,726, and that is our total conversion costs for January. Then we'll take our total equivalent units. So again, we just calculated these right up here. So our direct materials equivalent units was 52,300. And our conversion equivalent units was 51,770. Got that from right here. And now we just divide those to get our cost per equivalent unit. So if I take 496,850, divide that by 52,300 units, I get a cost of $9.50 per equivalent unit. So again, now this is why we had to figure out the equivalent units so that we could have more accurate cost information. If we just divided it by the whole number of units, it would have been different and it would not have been as accurate because these 3,400 units worth of direct materials were already accounted for in the previous accounting period. We're going to do the same thing to find out our conversion costs per equivalent unit. So I'm going to take 196,726 and divide that by 51,770 units. And I get $3.80 per equivalent unit. And those are good, which is good because we're going to need them for this next part. Okay, so now we're going to figure out all of our costs here. So our inventory in process on January 1st. Let's see where we can find that. Right here, $40,528. That's the total of the direct materials and conversion costs of the work in process at the beginning of the month. And then our costs incurred during January are right here. All of these costs added up, $496,850. That was our direct materials plus $101,560. That's our direct labor plus $95,166. That's our factory overhead. Gives us $693,576. So our total costs then are just the costs of all the inventory we made during the month plus what we had at the start of the month. So 40,528 plus 693,576 gives us 734,104. All right, so now to allocate, let's see, costs allocated to complete the partially completed units. So our inventory in process, again, that was 40,528. And then our direct materials, remember we didn't have to put any in. We discovered that all the way up here. 0 direct materials had to be put into the stuff that was already in process because the materials had already been put in. And then conversion, we had to do 1,360 equivalent units. And we know our conversion costs right here are $3.80 per unit. So I'm just going to take the number of equivalent units at January 1st times the cost per equivalent unit. So 1,360 equivalent units times $3.80 per gives me $5,168. So then I'll just add these. 0 plus 5,168 gives me 5,168. So that was my cost to complete the partially completed units. And then I'll just add these two together to get the costs of completed January 1st work in process. So 40,528 plus 5,168 gives me $45,696. Now we're going to figure out our cost of everything that was started and completed in January. So we have come up here and we'll see we had, with respect to direct materials, 49,600 units started and completed. And we'll multiply that by the cost per equivalent unit of 950. So 49,600 times 950 gives me 471,200. So that's the direct materials costs of all these units that we started and completed in January. We'll do the same for conversion. We'll come up and we'll say, okay, there were 49,600 units started and completed. And we'll multiply that by the cost per equivalent unit for conversion of 380 right here. So 49,600 times $3.80 gives me 188,480. Again, I'll just add these two up to get the total cost of what was started and completed. So 471,200 plus 188,480 equals 659,680. Then we'll add together our cost of the things that were completed from January 1st, plus the cost of the things started and completed during January, and that will add up to 705,376. Then we're going to take our inventory in process on January 31st. So again, we'll come up to inventory in process, 2,700 equivalent units times $9.50, which is the cost per equivalent unit. That's 25,650. We'll do the same thing with respect to conversion. We'll say 810 equivalent units times $3.80. And that gives us $3,078. We'll add these two together, 25,650 plus 3,078 gives us 28,728. And then finally, we'll add our transferred finished goods to our inventory in process. So 705,376 plus 28,728 gives us 734,104. So this sort of spells out how all these costs, where they all come from. And really, it's just a matter of multiplying the equivalent units in each of those sections times the cost per equivalent unit. I'll check my work. make sure I didn't make any mistakes because I'm going to carry some of that forward. Looks like we're good. So part 2 is that we're going to journalize the entries for the costs that were transferred from reaction to filling, and then the cost transferred from filling to finished goods. So again, remember that inventory is an asset. And so in essence, what we're doing is when we take raw materials and then we add labor and overhead to them, so materials and conversion costs in one department. And then once it's finished in that department, we have all those costs added together, the materials plus the labor plus the overhead. And then we transfer it out of that department and into the next department where they're going to add additional, sometimes materials and labor and overhead. And then when they get, so that's the process. So anytime we're finishing in one department and transferring it to the next, we're going to do a journal entry. So to transfer from reaction to filling means we're taking an inventory asset out of reaction and adding it to filling. So we're going to be increasing our inventory asset work in process for the filling department and decreasing or crediting our work in process for the reaction department. And then the amount that we're going to do is going to be, well, the amount that we're transferring over. So again, let's see. We come all the way up here. The amount transferred from reaction was $496,850. There's our journal entry. And then when we finish the goods, we'll be decreasing or increasing the finished goods department or inventory, that's an asset, and decreasing the work in process filling department asset. And again, we will know the amount or the total cost of all that is right here. So this one's a little tricky because you might look here because that says total cost assigned, but recognize that this portion of the cost is still in process. So it's not being transferred to finished goods yet. It won't be till it's done next month. So it's actually this amount that we transferred to the finished goods during January, $705,376. So that should be our journal entries. And now the last part where it says, determine the increase or decrease in the cost per equivalent unit from December to January for direct materials and conversion costs. If required, round your answers to 2 decimal places. So we're looking for the change in direct materials cost per equivalent unit and the change in conversion cost per equivalent unit. So all we really have to do is come up here and look and see, okay, so last month, direct materials were charged at, or were their cost that they calculated was $9.58 per equivalent unit. And then this month, during January, we calculated that our cost per equivalent unit for direct materials was $9.50. So that means direct materials costs had a decrease of 8 cents per equivalent unit. Conversion costs, we can do the same thing. We'll come up here and see conversion costs were $3.90 per equivalent unit. And then we calculated $3.80. So we would say that our conversion costs had a decrease of 10 cents. Finally, it says, discuss the uses of the cost production report and the result of part 3. So the cost of production report may be used as the basis for allocating product costs between our work in process and our finished goods. The report can also be used to control costs by holding each department head responsible for the units entering production and the costs incurred in the department. Any differences in unit product costs from one month to another, such as those in part 3, which we just did right here, can be studied carefully and any significant differences investigated. So in this case, if we said, hey, we have lower costs this month, 8 cents and 10 cents, we'd want to look into that and see why, right? If it's a good thing, then we'd want to see if we could continue keeping those costs low. If costs had gone up, we'd want to investigate and say, well, why do we think that happened? So again, remember, managerial accounting is about making decisions and helping managers and other decision makers have the info they need to make a decision. So all of this work, which seemed like a lot, was really just so that we could calculate the number of equivalent units, both with respect to direct materials and conversion, and then use that to figure out our cost per equivalent unit, and then use that cost per equivalent unit to figure out our total costs. That's really all we were doing there. And so it seems like a lot, but in the end, what we're trying to do is say, what are our costs? Can we keep them under control? And can we make sure that we're setting our price appropriately? So again, like I said up front, I know this isn't the most exciting of problems, but I do hope that walking through it will help you not only get an easy A on the guided assignment, but also be able to do well on the rest of the chapter's homework. I hope you have a great day and a great week.